I'm Ethan, and everything began the night Madison looked me in the eyes and told me she needed space to find herself. I didn't fight it. I told her I understood, that relationships sometimes need room to breathe. I believed her completely. But just a few days later, the truth started leaking through the cracks. A friend sent me a photo of Madison on the beach, smiling under the sun, but she wasn't with the girls' trip she claimed she was on. The man standing next to her was Hunter, her ex, and a married one at that. At first, I told myself there had to be a mistake. Maybe it was an old photo. Maybe it was a coincidence. But when I opened our shared iCloud and saw more pictures, each stamped with recent dates, every illusion shattered. Madison wasn't finding herself. She was finding him. The moment that first photo appeared on my phone, everything inside me tightened, but denial is a powerful force. I wanted to believe it was nothing. A misunderstanding. A coincidence. Maybe Madison had just run into Hunter by accident. Maybe the photo was cropped weird. But the more I stared at the image, the more the reality pressed down, heavy and suffocating. My friend sent a second picture, wider, clearer, and there was no way to misinterpret it. Madison wasn't on a carefree trip with her best friends. She was standing inches from Hunter, both laughing, both clearly comfortable, and both holding drinks on a sunny beach thousands of miles from home. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to confront Madison without certainty. I needed proof. Cold, undeniable, timestamp proof. That's when I remembered the shared iCloud account we set up months earlier, back when we were in that hopeful stage where you assume openness equals trust. I logged in, half hoping I wouldn't find anything, half preparing myself for the worst. Then the photos started loading. Dozens of them. Madison and Hunter at the airport. Madison and Hunter checking into the resort. Madison at dinner with him, the glow of candles reflecting off her wine glass. Photos of them on the beach, posing together, sometimes candid, sometimes smiling directly at the lens. And every single image carried a timestamp just days old. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't accidental. This was planned. Thought out. Booked in advance. She hadn't needed space. She'd needed cover. I kept scrolling, heart pounding, vision blurring. Messages, synced automatically from her phone, revealed conversations, dating back weeks. Conversations about travel plans. About packing. About reservations. About how she'd tell me she needed time for herself. She had prepared the story before the breakup conversation even happened. In one message, Hunter told her he couldn't wait to finally have a week alone without pretending. She replied with a heart. That one message hit harder than all the others combined. Pretending. So that's what our relationship had turned into for her. I sat there alone in the quiet apartment, surrounded by the life we built together, looking at the evidence of a life she was building without me. Anger flickered, but it wasn't the first feeling. It was grief. Grief for the version of her I thought I knew. Grief for the future I thought we shared. I copied the photos and messages into a private folder, not because I wanted to expose her, but because I needed to hold on to the truth in case I started gaslighting myself later. I needed reality in front of me. I needed something to anchor myself to. But as I scrolled deeper, a new realization struck me. It wasn't just me being betrayed. Hunter had a wife. A woman who thought her husband was living a normal week at home. Just like I had believed Madison was somewhere trying to find herself. My pain wasn't the only pain being hidden. Someone else out there deserved to know the truth just as much as I did. I sat in the quiet apartment, staring at the folder full of photos and messages, my hands shaking even though the room was still. Proof was one thing. Living with it was another. I could confront Madison when she returned, throw everything in her face, scream, demand answers. But even if she confessed, apologized, or spun another story, one fact would remain. Someone else was being betrayed, just as completely as I was. Hunter wasn't single. He had a wife, Olivia, and she was living her life with no idea that her husband was smiling in resort photos with another woman. I imagined what it would be like to be her. To wake up, make coffee, trust your partner, and never see the knife being sharpened behind your back. I knew that feeling intimately now. And the thought of letting her stay in that darkness made me feel physically sick. I found her Instagram easily. A public account. Family pictures. Beach photos. Happy shots of her and Hunter on their anniversary from just 2 months earlier. Then I saw her TikTok. Small following, mostly posts about cooking, travel, and normal life. Nothing that hinted at even the slightest suspicion. She thought her marriage was fine. She thought her husband was where he was supposed to be. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time, debating what to do. I didn't want drama. I didn't want revenge. But the truth didn't just belong to me. It belonged to her too. I crafted a message, polite, factual, and emotionally restrained even though my chest felt like it was caving in. I told her who I was. That I was Madison's partner. That I had believed she was on a solo trip. Then I told her that I had reason to believe Hunter was traveling with her. I waited before hitting send. My thumb hovered over the screen. Once I clicked, there was no taking it back. No returning to the version of life where secrets were still hidden. But some truths needed air. I pressed send. A few minutes later, a notification appeared. She had seen it. No typing bubble. No immediate reply. Then another notification came through. She had requested to video call. I didn't want to be on camera. I didn't want her to see the state I was in. So I messaged back, saying I understood if she wanted details, and I could send proof. She responded with a single sentence. Please send everything. So I did. Photo after photo. Screenshots of iCloud timestamps. Messages between Madison and Hunter booking hotels, confirming flights, planning the story they would each tell us. When I sent the last message, I sat there, staring at the screen, waiting. 3 dots appeared. Stopped. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then she said something that would stick with me for a long time. Thank you, now I know I'm not crazy. I didn't expect what came next. Not a quiet confrontation. Not a private breakdown. Within an hour, Olivia uploaded a TikTok video. A calm, composed, devastating breakdown of everything she had just learned. Names blurred, proof shown, emotions measured but undeniable. I didn't realize it at the time, but that video would be the match that set everything else on fire. Within the first hour, Olivia's TikTok gained a few thousand views. By the second hour, it was tens of thousands. And by morning, it was everywhere. Her calm and collected delivery was what made it powerful. She didn't shout or cry or beg for sympathy. She simply laid out facts. Dates. Locations. Blurry screenshots that still told the story clearly enough that people didn't need names to understand what had happened. And the internet ate it up. People began stitching the video, adding commentary and deep dives. Someone recognized the resort in the background of one of the photos and confirmed that packages had to be booked months in advance. Someone else recreated the timeline based on flight availability. A few self-declared social media investigators grabbed bits and pieces of Madison's old posts and compared outfits, nails, timestamps, and background details. Within hours, the internet had done what the internet does best. It turned 2 private relationships into public entertainment. Comments ranged from sympathetic to brutal. Some people expressed heartbreak for Olivia, praising her composure. Others dogpiled Madison and Hunter without hesitation. Accusations, insults, predictions, all flooding the comment sections faster than I could refresh. Then another shoe dropped. Someone found Madison's Instagram account. Her latest story was a picture of a cocktail by the beach, captioned with something generic and positive about relaxation and clarity. People screenshot it and began sharing it under Olivia's video. They speculated. They laughed. They raged. They connected dots that I didn't even know existed. I had turned off comments on my own social media months ago, but somehow people still found me. Messages started rolling in from strangers. Some supportive, some demanding the full story, some asking if I was going to expose her more publicly. I ignored them. This wasn't a circus I wanted to run, but the circus was no longer in my control. Madison must have started seeing notifications too. Her phone began buzzing nonstop wherever she was. She sent me a short text at first. "Can we talk?" I let it sit there unread. An hour later, another message came in. "I think something is going on online. We need to figure this out together." Together? That word had lost its meaning. By the afternoon, people on TikTok were reaching out to Olivia offering their own stories of infidelity, screenshots, and advice. Hashtags began trending. Reaction channels made videos. Some even monetized the situation within hours. It was surreal watching something that felt like a personal tragedy become a viral pipeline for views and discourse. At one point, someone even made a conspiracy theory claiming Madison and Hunter had been cheating for years and providing fabricated clues from old posts. I closed the app. It was too much. But closing it didn't stop the world from spinning. Madison called me next. When I didn't answer, she called again. Then again. Then she sent a voice message, speaking fast, panicked, trying to explain that everything was being blown out of proportion. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't acknowledged what she'd done. Her priority wasn't the betrayal. It was the consequences. Meanwhile, Olivia uploaded a second TikTok. Not angry. Not accusatory. Just an update, thanking people for their support and emphasizing that no one deserved to live in the dark about their own life. That one video only fueled the wildfire. By nightfall, Madison's name, though blurred and never directly shared, was circulating widely enough that people had figured things out anyway. Some called for accountability. Some just loved the drama. And social media continued doing what it always does. It turned real people into characters, real pain into entertainment. And the world waited to see what would happen next. Madison came home 2 days earlier than planned, and I heard the sound of her keys jangling outside the apartment before she even knocked. She wasn't calm anymore. The composed, "I need space to find myself" version of her was gone. The woman standing in our doorway looked shaken, exhausted, and frightened in a way I had never seen. She stepped inside without waiting for permission and immediately started talking, her voice trembling but rehearsed. She said she could explain. She said things had gotten out of control. She said the internet didn't understand the situation. But she still hadn't said she was sorry. I sat on the couch, arms crossed, not moving, not interrupting, letting her speak until her excuses ran out. She kept packing around the living room, brushing her hair behind her ears, wiping her face, breathing hard like she was about to faint. I finally asked her a single question. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" Her mouth opened and closed before she finally whispered that she didn't want to hurt me. The irony stung. She hadn't wanted to hurt me, yet she had lied for weeks, booked flights behind my back, slept beside me pretending everything was fine, and looked into my eyes and asked for space so she could spend a week with another man. Hurt wasn't just collateral damage. It was the blueprint. She sat down and tried to rationalize it. She said the trip was a moment of clarity. She said she felt confused. She said Hunter made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Every sentence sounded less like remorse and more like justification. Every word was another brick in the wall forming between us. I told her I had copies of everything. Photos, messages, dates. She froze when she realized I had seen the iCloud contents. For a moment, relief flickered across her face, as if she thought the damage was only between us. Then I told her I had contacted Olivia. She stared at me like I had personally detonated her world. Her voice rose, and she asked how I could drag someone else into this. That was when my patience broke. I stood up and told her Olivia had been dragged into this long before I ever touched my phone. I told her the cheating wasn't a private secret between lovers. It was a public betrayal involving real lives, real marriages, real futures. Madison's breathing got shallow. She tried to shift the blame. She said the video going viral wasn't her fault. She said she never wanted the internet involved. She said we needed to work together to do damage control. She still hadn't apologized. There was no accountability in anything she said. Just fear of consequences. I walked to the drawer, pulled out the spare key to the apartment, and set it on the coffee table. I told her she needed to pack a bag and go stay somewhere else. She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. She asked if this was really the end over one mistake. But it hadn't been one mistake. It had been months of secrecy, manipulation, and planning. I told her she had stopped choosing us long before I stopped believing in us. She cried harder then, real tears, messy and unfiltered, begging for just one more chance, just one more conversation. But I had finally reached the point she'd already crossed weeks ago. I told her she needed to leave. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted revenge. But because sometimes the door has to close before healing can begin on either side. She picked up the key with shaking fingers, packed in silence, and walked out without another word. The moment the door clicked behind her, the apartment felt quiet in a way I had never felt before. In the days after Madison moved out, the internet didn't calm down. If anything, it intensified. Olivia continued posting short updates, never cruel, never aggressive, just transparent. People rallied behind her, and the support snowballed. Meanwhile, Madison tried to return to work as if nothing had happened, but that illusion shattered almost immediately. Her company operated in marketing, heavily dependent on public image and reputation. Clients had begun sending emails, asking if the woman trending online for cheating scandals and viral TikTok drama was the same Madison who managed their accounts. Screenshots of comments and reaction videos circulated among offices. It didn't take long before her supervisor called her into a meeting. They spoke in careful corporate language about professionalism, public trust, and brand safety, but the message was clear. She was placed on forced leave, pending internal review. Madison called me that night, sobbing, saying they were ruining her life. I didn't know how to respond, because the truth was simple. Her life wasn't being ruined. It was just being revealed. Hunter wasn't doing any better. His workplace caught wind of the situation as well, and because he worked in a family-oriented business with a wholesome public image, the blowback hit fast. Olivia's lawyer reached out to him with divorce papers within a week. From what I heard later, he tried to negotiate, to settle quietly, but Olivia's stance was firm. If he had chosen to make private decisions publicly toxic, then the consequences could be public too. Meanwhile, Madison kept spiraling. She didn't take accountability. Instead, she channeled her energy into trying to shift blame. She claimed I had violated privacy by accessing the shared iCloud account. She tried to accuse me of emotional sabotage. At one point, she even contacted a lawyer, intending to pursue legal action against me. The lawyer reviewed the evidence, timestamps, shared ownership of the account and the context, and ultimately dropped the case. There was no legal basis. There was only desperation. I learned later that the lawyer also saw the emails sync to iCloud, messages showing just how long this affair had been going on, how many excuses had been rehearsed in advance, and how strategically the trip had been planned. Those emails destroyed any illusion of this being a momentary lapse in judgment. It was sustained deception. Calculated. Repeated. And that mattered. Especially in court. Because Olivia didn't just file for divorce. Her attorney subpoenaed Madison as a witness. Madison, who had once been charmed by secrecy and adrenaline, now had to stand in a legal environment and account for her actions in writing and under oath. Every message, every reservation, every excuse became documentation. Nothing disappeared just because she cried. Her parents eventually learned what had happened too, not because she told them, but because someone from their town sent them the viral TikTok. The shame wasn't private anymore. It spread into her family, her career, her future. She called me again, asking how I could let things go this far. But I hadn't taken anything public. I hadn't posted a word online. I hadn't inflamed the situation. All I had done was tell the truth to the one person who deserved to know. Everything else had been a chain reaction, caused by the lies collapsing under their own weight. By the end of the month, Madison had lost her job, lost her public credibility, and lost the story she once controlled. She was no longer the woman who needed space to find herself. She was someone who had been forced to face herself, whether she was ready or not. Madison's world didn't collapse all at once. It fell apart piece by piece, painfully, slowly, and publicly. After losing her job, she tried to salvage her reputation the only way she could think of. She launched a podcast. In the first episode, she attempted to tell her side, framed as a journey of personal growth and self-discovery. She avoided using real names, but anyone who had seen Olivia's TikTok already knew exactly who she was talking about. She claimed the trip had been a moment of emotional clarity. She said people were misinterpreting her choices. She said human relationships were complicated and shouldn't be judged from the outside. She said she was learning to love herself again. But the internet had no sympathy left. Clips of the podcast were reposted and torn apart. Commenters pointed out inconsistencies, contradictions, and moments where she shifted blame instead of taking responsibility. Some accused her of weaponizing self-help language to avoid accountability. Others simply mocked her. By the end of the week, the podcast had thousands of one-star reviews. A scheduled second episode never aired. She quietly deleted the account. Around the same time, she packed up her apartment and moved back to her hometown. Her savings were limited. Her professional reputation was scorched. Whatever life she had been building in the city no longer existed. Meanwhile, Olivia's trajectory went in the opposite direction. Her calmness, clarity, and grace under pressure made her a symbol for people who had lived through similar betrayals. She was invited onto podcasts. She gained hundreds of thousands of followers across platforms. She wrote a book about self-respect, emotional boundaries, and recovering from deception. The book became a bestseller in its category. People quoted lines from it, printed passages, shared screenshots. She was no longer just the woman who had been cheated on. She had become a voice, a guide, someone others looked to for strength. Hunter's life, from what I heard, didn't recover as cleanly. He moved into a rental apartment after the separation. His family members distanced themselves. Colleagues who had once respected him now looked at him differently. The price of his decisions had finally found him. As for me, I rebuilt slowly. I didn't post online. I didn't respond to strangers. I stayed quiet and focused on therapy, on work, on learning how to trust myself again. Madison had shattered my belief in her, but the deeper wound was the one she had left in my ability to trust my own instincts. For a long time, I replayed signs I had missed. Conversations that suddenly had hidden meanings. moments where I had given her the benefit of the doubt. But healing isn't a single breakthrough. It's a gradual process of returning to yourself. Months passed. One day, I met someone new. Not by searching, not by forcing it, but by living my life and letting connection happen naturally. She was patient, warm, kind, and unafraid of honesty. She didn't fill the empty space. She helped me reclaim it. And in her company, I began to see the version of myself I used to be, before iCloud photos and hidden messages and lies disguised as self-care. Madison eventually reached out with a long email. It was filled with apologies, reflections, and regret. She said she understood now. She said she had lost everything. She said she hoped one day I could forgive her. I didn't hate her. I didn't want revenge. But forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. I wrote her back, briefly, wishing her healing and hopping she would learn from what she'd done. And then I closed that chapter for good. Some stories don't need dramatic endings. They just need closure. Looking back, the biggest lesson wasn't about love or betrayal. It was about this simple truth. When someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them. And maybe, just maybe, never share an iCloud account again. In the end, life didn't wrap itself in a perfect bow or hand out neatly packaged justice. There was no dramatic confrontation, no final explosion of emotion, no cinematic speech that changed everything. There was only reality settling in, quietly and firmly, the way truth always does once it has nowhere left to hide. Madison went her way, forced to see herself without the filters she once hid behind. Olivia moved forward stronger, proof that betrayal can destroy you or redefine you, depending on the way you choose to stand back up. Hunter faced the consequences he spent years pretending would never reach him. And I learned that healing is not about revenge, victory, or winning some invisible scoreboard. Healing is simply choosing yourself again and again, until choosing yourself becomes natural instead of painful. Some nights I still think about how different everything might have been if honesty had come before secrecy, if communication had come before deception, if either of them had chosen respect over selfishness. But the past is unchangeable. What matters is who you become after it. I moved forward. I rebuilt. I loved again. And I carry one reminder with me, solid as stone. When someone shows you who they truly are, believe them.